Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed that a man walking alone is always walking a little faster than he needs to? Not because he's in a hurry, but because if he slowed down, really slowed down, he might hear the sound of his own emptiness echoing back at him. And perhaps more terrifying than loneliness itself is realizing you've grown comfortable in it. Now, I invite you, not to a speech, but to a reflection. This isn't about relationships, not really. It's about the architecture of the soul. And what happens when half the temple is missing? Stay with me, and you may begin to feel something stir, something you thought you'd buried, outgrown, or replaced with ambition. But it's still there, calling you. We were told, subtly and often, that wholeness is a solitary conquest, that the strong stand alone, that love is a luxury, and a partner a distraction. But this is a clever trick of the mind, a sleight of hand by the ego. For in truth, you are not a whole person in isolation. You are a potential, only half awake. And it is in the presence of another, in the sacred friction of relationship, that your edges are softened, your depth revealed. A man who walks alone hears silence, but it is not the silence of serenity. It is the silence of something missing. It's like listening to a symphony where the cello has been removed. Yes, the song continues, but the body of it, the warmth, is absent. You can fool your ears. You can say, this is fine, I enjoy the space. But deep down there is a craving that echoes louder than any voice, the desire to be felt deeply by another. There's a shadow in solitude that looks suspiciously like strength. The man alone wears it like armor. I don't need anyone. I'm better off. Freedom is my lover. But dig beneath these mantras, and you will often find fear dressed as independence. Fear of vulnerability, fear of being known and then left. And so many men choose the desert over the risk of the garden. Safer to walk alone than to feel the loss of holding someone and losing them. But is that living or is that hiding? You cannot see your own face without a mirror. You cannot understand your true self without a reflection. And what greater mirror exists than a life partner? Not someone who completes you, but someone who reveals you, who challenges your self-story, your rhythms, your desires, not to break you, but to free you from yourself. To walk without a partner is not a failure, but to believe you can fully know yourself without one is a tragic limitation. See, the greatest misconception about love is that it's a feeling. It isn't. It's a practice. And a life partner, not a trophy, not a soulmate in glittering lights, is a co-practitioner. Someone you stumble with, rise with, soften with. It's not a fairy tale. It's a dojo. And every argument, every compromise, every act of staying is part of the training. A man alone may master many things, but he will never master surrender, because surrender cannot be rehearsed in a vacuum. You might tell the world you're fine, you might have your routines, your hobbies, your late-night philosophies, but when the noise dies down, when the music fades, there is a whisper inside you. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it simply says, I wish someone was here. Not to fix you, not to fill a void, but to witness you, to laugh at your odd little thoughts, to trace your back with a fingertip when words run out. That longing is not weakness. It is divine. It is the universe in you, aching to be seen through another's eyes. So to the man who walks alone, I do not pity you. I simply ask, when will you stop pretending that your shadow is enough? Because love, true partnership, is not a crutch. It's not a need. It's a mirror, a map, a ritual, a return. And until you find it, or let it find you, you may walk tall, but you'll always walk incomplete. We are raised on stories that praise the lone wolf, the solitary hero, the man who needs no one. Somewhere along the line, the idea of self-sufficiency became the ultimate ideal. This myth that to be whole, to be strong, to be truly evolved, one must stand entirely on his own. So we grow up believing that to lean on another is to display weakness, that love, partnership, and deep emotional intimacy are distractions from purpose, or worse, dangerous dependencies. And yet, beneath all the armor and accolades of self-made men, there is often a quiet, aching question. Is this all there is? The illusion of individual completion is seductive. It offers control. It allows you to avoid the messy terrain of vulnerability, of compromise, of being seen, truly seen, by another. When you're alone, you can shape your world like clay, bend it to your preferences, never face the reflection of your flaws in someone else's eyes. But that's the catch. What you gain in control you lose in depth. Because without that mirror, without that sacred friction that arises only in connection, you will only ever know the surface of yourself. A man alone might refine his talents, reach career heights, sculpt his body, master philosophies, but he cannot access the deepest layers of his being without relationship. It's not that solitude is meaningless, it's powerful, necessary even, but it is not the summit. It is preparation for the summit. Without the presence of a life partner, someone whose very existence challenges your habits, evokes your tenderness, tests your patience, and invites your heart to soften, something vital remains dormant. Completion does not come from another person, but connection awakens the parts of you that solitude cannot touch. You are not half a soul looking for your other half. You are a complete instrument waiting for the right hands to play your hidden notes. There is a kind of silence that feels sacred, like the hush of a forest before dawn, or the stillness between heartbeats when you're deeply at peace. But there's another kind of silence, the one that follows a man who walks alone for too long. It's not serenity, it's absence. It's the missing notes in a melody you've forgotten how to... On the surface, everything may appear calm. He wakes, he eats, he works, he sleeps. He may even convince himself that he's content. But in that quiet, if he listens closely, he'll begin to hear something not quite right. It's the sound of conversations that never happened, the laughter that echoes only in memory, the ghost of a presence that was never invited in. A man who walks alone becomes the only audience to his life. There's no one to ask, "Did you see that?" when beauty passes by. No one to nudge at midnight and whisper, "Remember this." Time becomes a flat road, not a journey. There are no pauses to admire, no shared mile markers, no hand to hold when the way gets uncertain. And eventually the silence isn't quiet anymore, it's loud, deafening even. Not with noise, but with the weight of what's missing. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but slowly erodes the inner voice, until even that begins to whisper instead of speak. We often mistake the absence of conflict for peace. But peace is not the lack of noise, it's the presence of harmony. And harmony by its nature requires more than one note, more than one soul. Without someone to meet us in the middle, to sit beside us in stillness, to speak, even if only with their eyes, the silence takes over. It becomes the loudest thing in the room. And the man walking alone, he might not notice it at first, but one day he'll realize he's been listening to that silence for far too long. There is something seductive about walking alone. It feels noble, even heroic. The man who chooses solitude can wrap himself in the warm cloak of independence, whispering to himself that he is beyond the need for affection, beyond the messiness of connection. It becomes a quiet religion, the worship of self-reliance. But beneath this polished surface, solitude often hides something far less romantic: fear. The fear of being known too deeply, the fear of losing control, the fear of letting someone close enough to touch the parts you've carefully kept in shadow. And so ego steps in, offering a clever disguise. It says, "You don't need anyone." It says, "This is strength." But what if that voice isn't strength at all? What if it's just fear with a louder voice? The ego creates a fortress. It builds high walls, moats, and gates. It convinces the man inside that he is free because no one else can enter. But freedom in a fortress is still a prison. The man walking alone might believe he's untouchable, but in truth he's untouched. No one challenges his assumptions. No one interrupts his patterns. No one reflects the edges he doesn't want to see. Alone, a man can mistake comfort for clarity. He can confuse stillness with peace, when in fact nothing is moving because nothing is alive. The deception runs deep. We call it solitude when it's actually avoidance. We call it clarity when it's just a lack of mirrors. Real growth doesn't come from echo chambers. It comes from being seen, truly seen, and still choosing to see. But the ego doesn't want that. The ego wants control, not connection. It wants safety, not intimacy. It would rather be alone than be vulnerable. And so the man walks on, convincing himself he's complete, when in truth he's unfinished, not broken, just unopened, a letter never read, a story never told out loud. And though he may call it strength, deep down something inside him knows the strongest thing he could do is let someone in. You can learn a great deal in solitude. You can master disciplines, observe your own thoughts, become fluent in silence. But there is a mirror you cannot find alone, a mirror that doesn't reflect your face but your being, a reflection only visible in the presence of another soul, particularly the one you allow close enough to touch what you usually hide. Alone, you are the writer, the reader, and the critic of your own story. And while that may feel complete, It's not the full truth. Because no matter how self-aware, how disciplined, how inwardly vast you become, there will always be parts of yourself that only emerge in the light of relationship. A life partner is not there to complete you, but to reveal you. Their presence, consistent, familiar, and intimate, has a peculiar magic. Over time, they draw out your hidden contradictions, the unnoticed gestures, the stories you tell without realizing, not to shame you, not to fix you, but simply by existing in such proximity, they become the sacred mirror through which your truest self is shown. They see the patterns you've normalized, the fears you've disguised as preferences, the dreams you've quietly abandoned, and they don't reflect these back as judgments, but as invitations to become more honest, more whole. Alone, you can believe your mask is your face. You can rehearse roles that no one challenges, but when you stand in front of someone who truly sees you, the performance falters. And that's when the real work begins. That's when your softness, your anger, your longing, your uncertainty are all given space to surface, not for correction, but for connection. The right partner won't try to shape you. They'll simply hold up the mirror and whisper, "Look, this is you. Are you ready to meet yourself?" And in that reflection, you may see something you've never seen before. Not because it was never there, but because you were never still enough, never close enough, never loved enough to see it clearly. We often speak of love as if it's something you find, like a lost coin on the pavement or a shooting star that happens to pass overhead. But real love, the kind that endures past the butterflies and the warm glow of early days, is not found. It's built, it's practiced, not once but again and again, sometimes quietly, sometimes clumsily, often when it's the very last thing you feel like doing. A life partner is not a prize you win, not a pedestal upon which to place your need for validation. They are a fellow traveler, a sparring partner for the soul, a co-creator in the slow, sacred art of becoming. Love is not the height of emotion. It's the depth of commitment. It is not what you feel at the mountaintop. It's how you walk together through the valley. And practice doesn't mean perfection. It means showing up on the days when nothing is romantic, when everything irritates, when silence stretches longer than usual, and your own thoughts start sounding like strangers. That's where the real work begins. That's where love proves itself, not in candlelight, but in the shadow of ordinary days. When you choose to listen instead of win, to stay soft instead of guard up, to say, "I see you," even when you don't feel understood yourself. Alone you can control everything. There are no interruptions to your rhythm, no unexpected mirrors held up to your moods. You can call it peace, but it's a peace with no resistance, and therefore no growth. A partner, a true one, disrupts you in the best way. They invite you to consider someone else in your world, not because you have to, because you choose to, because love as a practice is a daily offering of presence. It is a dance of attunement. It teaches you how to open without unraveling, how to hold without owning, how to care without controlling. And in doing so, you learn not just how to love them, but how to love yourself in ways you never could alone. There is a longing that lives in every soul, but it doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up in the quiet moments, just before sleep or while watching sunlight fall through a window, or in the ache that follows a beautiful moment you had no one to share with. It's not loneliness exactly. It's more subtle, more sacred. It's the desire not just to be with someone, but to be known by someone, fully and without effort, to be understood without translation, to be loved not for what you show, but for what you are when the mask drops and you think no one is watching. You can live a very full life without ever answering that call. You can achieve, explore, learn, and build. You can surround yourself with laughter, friendship, even admiration, and still, in the background, this longing hums. It is the part of you that yearns to sit in silence next to another human being and feel nothing missing. It doesn't ask for fireworks. It doesn't need dramatic gestures. It asks for presence, for someone who looks across the room and sees you, not the version of you the world celebrates, but the tender, sometimes insecure, sometimes absurd creature that lives underneath all that polish. You may try to fill it with noise or purpose or busyness. You may convince yourself that you're above such desires, that you've outgrown them, that needing another in that way is weakness or indulgence. But the soul is patient. It waits. It keeps placing quiet reminders in your path. A stranger's laugh that sounds familiar, the warmth of a shared glance, the way a moment feels too wide when there's no one beside you to witness it. This longing doesn't diminish you. It doesn't make you broken or needy. It makes you human. It is not a flaw in your design. It is the design. because some parts of you were never meant to awaken alone. So if you find yourself walking alone, perhaps not in the physical sense, but in that quiet emotional solitude only you can truly feel, pause, not to chase someone, not to fix the ache, but to listen to that subtle voice within you that's been asking all along, not for completion, but for connection. The man who walks without his life partner is not lost. He is simply unfinished. Not lacking, but waiting. Waiting to be revealed through the gentle friction of another's presence, through the dance, the mirror, the surrender of love as a daily act of courage. You do not need someone to rescue you, but perhaps, just perhaps, there is a deeper kind of freedom, the kind that doesn't run from love, but walks steadily toward it, not because you're incomplete, but because you're finally ready to be seen all the way through.